The Parkside Café glowed like a jewel in the middle of the city, a place where polished shoes clicked on marble floors and laughter from the wealthy drifted above the clatter of fine china. Waiters moved with precision, carrying plates that looked more like artwork than food. At the center table, William Foster sat alone in tailored silence. His silver hair caught the afternoon sun, and the sharp lines of his custom suit framed a man who had spent decades commanding boardrooms and breaking deals that shaped the skyline. His hands trembled just slightly as he lifted the menu, the only visible sign of age creeping past the armor of power. Across from him, Vanessa adjusted her silk scarf, the diamonds on her wrist catching the light with every casual flick of her hand. Her beauty was effortless but cold, her gaze fixed on her phone, ignoring the man she once chased with smiles. Beyond the patio fence, Jalen lingered near the hedge. His hoodie hung loose on his narrow frame, eyes darting from plate to plate. Hunger clawed at him, but what he saw next froze him mid-step. Vanessa's hand moved, quick, practiced, pouring something into William's soup. Jalen's heart skipped. Something was very wrong. William's gaze drifted back to his phone, the screen casting a cold light across his face. Messages from business partners, notifications from financial markets, and unanswered calls blinked like silent alarms. He scrolled without reading, his mind caught somewhere between exhaustion and irritation. The soup sat untouched before him, steam rising in delicate curls that faded into the afternoon air. Vanessa leaned closer, resting her chin on one manicured hand. Her smile looked painted, stretched thin, and rehearsed. Every now and then, her eyes flickered toward William's spoon, her other hand nervously twisting the rings on her fingers. The air around her buzzed with a tension invisible to everyone except one boy standing just outside the fence. Jalen stayed low, crouching behind a row of flower pots. His heart pounded against his ribs, his breath coming in short, shallow bursts. His stomach growled again, but the ache of hunger was quickly replaced by something colder, fear. He blinked hard, hoping that what he had just seen was a trick of the light, a misunderstanding. But deep down, he knew it was not. He had seen her tilt that small glass bottle. He had watched the clear liquid disappear into the soup like it was nothing. For a long moment, Jalen did nothing. His instincts screamed for him to turn away, to slip back into the shadows where people like him belonged. Street kids did not get involved in the lives of people like William Foster. That was a lesson Jalen had learned early. Speaking up could mean trouble. It could mean police. It could mean worse. The faces of strangers blurred together in his mind. Waiters who had chased him off sidewalks. Businessmen who had pretended not to see him sleeping on park benches. Women who clutched their purses tighter when he passed. Jalen was used to being invisible. He was used to being the kid that people avoided, the face that blended into alleyways and shelter lines. His hands trembled as he gripped the metal railing. This was not his world. This was polished silverware and silk dresses. This was laughter over champagne and quiet conversations about weekend homes in the countryside. Jalen had no place here. But as he watched William lift the spoon toward his mouth, the weight in Jalen's chest grew unbearable. The man's hand shook, not enough for others to notice, but Jalen saw it. William was tired, distracted, and completely unaware that the person sitting across from him was not who she appeared to be. Jalen's mind raced. Should he yell? Should he run inside? Would anyone even believe him? He was just a homeless kid in a faded hoodie with dirt on his shoes and fear in his eyes. Yet, somewhere deep inside him, a voice pushed forward. It was small, shaky, but relentless. If he did nothing, this man would get hurt. That was not something Jalen could carry for the rest of his life. He closed his eyes for a brief second, sucked in a breath, and tightened his grip on the railing. One choice. One moment. That was all it would take. Jalen opened his eyes, fixed them on William Foster, and prepared to do what most people in his situation would never dared. He was about to speak. Jalen's heart slammed against his chest as he pushed himself away from the railing. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else, heavy and stiff, but they carried him forward. Without giving himself time to second guess, he marched straight toward the center table. His voice cracked, but the words came out louder than he expected. Do not eat that. The cafe froze. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks hovered, halfway to mouths. A glass clinked loudly as a startled woman dropped it onto her plate. Dozens of eyes turned toward the sound of the outburst, landing on the small boy standing just beyond the patio gate. Fists clenched, chest heaving that William's spoon froze inches from his lips. His wide, tired eyes locked onto Jalen's. Confusion flickered across his face as he tried to make sense of the scene unfolding before him. Vanessa whipped her head around, her expression shifting from shock to fury in a single breath. "What did you just say?" Her voice sliced through the air like a blade. Jalen took a shaky step closer, his voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. "She put something in your food," he said, pointing a trembling finger directly at Vanessa. "I saw her. Do not eat it." Gasps rippled through the cafe like a wave. Patrons exchanged wide-eyed glances. Some leaned in closer, eager to catch every word. Others sat frozen, their eyes darting between the boy, the man, and the woman at the center of the unfolding drama. William slowly lowered the spoon back into the bowl, his gaze shifting from Jalen to Vanessa. "What is he talking about?" His voice remained calm, but there was a tremor beneath it, the kind that betrayed a man trying to hold on to composure. Vanessa's mask of elegance remained for only a second longer. Then it cracked. "He is lying," she snapped, rising to her feet, so quickly her chair scraped loudly against the stone floor. "Who even let him in here? This is ridiculous." Her laughter rang out, brittle and forced. "Look at him," she said, sweeping her hand toward Jalen with open disdain. "He is just some street kid looking for attention. He probably wants money or food. This is pathetic." Jalen's throat tightened, but he did not back down. His fists stayed clenched at his sides, his feet planted firmly. "I am not lying," he said, his voice steadying with every word. "You poured something into his soup when he was looking at his phone. I saw the bottle. I saw you stir it." The crowd's energy shifted again. Murmurs spread like wildfire. "Did she really do that? That boy sounds serious." "She does look nervous." Vanessa's face flushed deep red. "This is insane," she barked. "You are going to believe some random kid off the street." "Over me." But William's eyes did not leave Jalen. There was something about the boy's tone, an unwavering, desperate sincerity, that made him pause. Years of business taught him to read people, to spot liars and manipulators. Jalen did not look away. He did not flinch. The spoon remained on the table. The soup sat untouched, and the weight of the moment settled over everyone present. William leaned back slightly, his voice low but unmistakably firm. "Explain yourself, Vanessa," he said. "Now." William sat frozen in his chair, staring first at Jalen, then at Vanessa. His mind raced. Could this boy be telling the truth? Or was it some cruel joke? The woman sitting across from him was his wife. Yet, the boy's eyes, they showed no sign of lying. The waiter stood nearby, holding a tray with trembling hands. His eyes darted between the three of them. Clearing his throat, he spoke softly but loud enough for the table to hear. "Sir, should I call the police?" The words hung in the air like heavy smoke. A few guests gasped. Chairs shifted. More people began to whisper. Phones appeared in hands, ready to capture whatever would happen next. Vanessa's face changed in an instant. The calm, charming smile she wore earlier vanished. Panic flickered in her eyes. She shook her head quickly. "No, there is no need for that," she said, forcing a laugh that sounded anything but natural. "This is just a silly misunderstanding." William did not respond. His gaze stayed locked on her. Something in her voice felt wrong. He had known her long enough to notice when she was faking. Jalen took a small step forward, finding strength in the silence around him. "She used a small bottle," he said, his voice clearer now. "It looked like medicine. The liquid was clear. She poured it into the soup when you were checking your phone, and then she stirred it so you would not notice." More people in the cafe turned their attention toward the table. A couple near. The fountain whispered loud enough for others to hear. "Did you hear that?" He saw her do it. A poison bottle. Vanessa's hands trembled as she grabbed her purse. "This is insane," she cried out. "I cannot believe we are entertaining this nonsense. He is just a boy from the street. Why would anyone believe him?" But her voice betrayed her. The sharp edge of fear cut through every word. Her shoulders tensed. Her face turned pale. That William's stomach twisted. Doubt crawled through him like ice water. Could Vanessa, really? The waiter took a cautious step backward, glancing toward the cafe doors. "Sir, should I still make the call?" he asked again. William stayed silent for a few seconds longer, then gave a slow nod, his eyes still fixed on his wife. "Yes," he said. "Call them." The waiter hurried inside. Vanessa's breathing grew faster. She glanced toward the street. Far in the distance, the faint wail of sirens began to rise, cutting through the afternoon air. Jalen stood firm, refusing to back away. His heart raced, but he kept his eyes steady. "I told you the truth," he said, his voice low but steady. "You will find out soon enough." Vanessa's hands fumbled with her handbag strap. Her polished image was falling apart by the second. The crowd around them grew larger. People leaned in from nearby tables. Waiters paused mid-service, watching every movement. William's mind churned with questions. The sirens grew louder, closer, and as Vanessa's eyes darted around like a cornered animal, one thing became painfully clear. The truth was about to come out. The flashing blue and red lights from the police cars spilled across the cafe entrance. As two uniformed officers stepped inside, the low murmur of the crowd turned into an uneasy silence. All eyes followed the officers as they made their way through the maze of tables straight toward William's corner. The taller officer, with a square jaw and steady gaze, spoke first. "What seems to be the issue here?" His tone was firm but neutral. William stood slowly, steadying himself against the table. "Officers," he said, pointing to the untouched bowl of soup. "This boy claims my wife poisoned my food." A collective gasp rippled through the cafe. The word poison seemed to freeze the air in place. Vanessa stepped back, her face flushing deep red. "This is insane," she shouted, her voice shaking. "He is making it up. He is just some street kid trying to cause trouble." The officer's expression remained unreadable. He crouched beside the table and leaned in toward the bowl. Bringing it close, he took a cautious sniff, then straightened up and turned to Vanessa. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "do you have anything to say about this before we proceed?" Vanessa's eyes darted toward the exit. For a brief second, it looked like she might bolt, but with the entire cafe watching, she stayed frozen in place, gripping her handbag like a lifeline. "There is nothing to tell," she snapped. "This is all ridiculous. I would never do something like that." But her voice cracked on the last word. Jalen stood rigid beside the table, refusing to look away. "I saw her," he repeated quietly but with conviction. "I saw her pour something into the soup." The shorter officer pulled out a small testing kit from his belt. "We will need to take a sample," he said, reaching for the bowl. That was when Vanessa lost control. "No," she screamed, stepping forward and slamming her hand down over the bowl. The sudden outburst shocked everyone. Patrons jerked in their seats. Phones came out instantly. Screens lit up as cameras started recording. The taller officer narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am," he said, "is there something you would like to tell us?" Vanessa's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her polished exterior crumbled right in front of them. Tears filled her eyes, but not the kind that came from sadness. These were tears of panic. "I am tired," she burst out, her voice breaking. "Tired of living under his shadow. Everything is always about him. His business, his money, his control over every single part of my life." The cafe fell completely silent again. William's face drained of color. The officer stepped forward, his tone now shifting from professional to grim. "Ma'am, are you admitting to attempting to poison your husband?" Vanessa's lips parted as if she would deny it, but the words never came. Her shoulders sagged, her gaze dropping to the floor. I did not want it to go this far," she whispered, but it was too late. The officers moved quickly. One gripped her arm while the other pulled her hands behind her back. "Vanessa Foster, you are under arrest for attempted murder," the officer said. Gasps erupted from the tables around them. Guests leaned closer with wide eyes. Some filmed. Others whispered in shocked. As the officers led her toward the door, Vanessa's voice rose again, shrill and desperate. "You do not understand. I deserved better. I deserved everything he had." The words echoed through the cafe as she disappeared. Outside into the waiting police car, William sank back into his chair, his trembling hand slowly pushing the untouched soup away. His face showed only one thing now: betrayal. William remained seated, staring down at the untouched bowl of soup as if it might still hold all the answers he needed. The noise of the cafe felt distant now. Soft whispers, clinking glasses, hurried footsteps, but none of it registered. The man who had spent his life making billion-dollar decisions now sat frozen, blindsided by a betrayal he had never seen coming. His hand trembled slightly as he rubbed his forehead. For several long moments, he said nothing. He simply breathed in slow, shallow breaths, letting the reality sink deeper with every passing second. Then, as if pulled by some invisible thread, his eyes lifted and landed on Jalen. The boy still stood where he had been moments earlier, hands clenched tightly at his sides, shoulders stiff with fear and uncertainty. His wide, dark eyes stayed locked on William's face, waiting, hoping, but also preparing to be dismissed, to be told to leave. That William's voice came out softer than usual, almost unfamiliar even to himself. "Boy, what is your name?" Jalen swallowed hard. "Jalen," he said, his voice quiet but clear. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Then William gestured toward the empty seat across from him. "Sit." Jalen hesitated, glancing around the cafe. Dozens of strangers still watched, some with pity, others with curiosity. He shifted nervously, unsure if this was a trick or some kind of test, but William's gaze stayed steady. "Please," he added, slowly. Jalen crossed the distance and lowered himself into the chair. His shoulders remained tense, his fingers gripping the edges of the seat like he might need to jump up and run at any second. William studied him carefully. For the first time that afternoon, he really looked at the boy sitting before him. The dirt on his sleeves, the worn-out sneakers, the hollows beneath his eyes, all signs of a life spent surviving, not living. "You saved my life," William said finally. The words felt strange coming from him, but they were true. Jalen shifted awkwardly. I just did what felt right," he murmured. "I could not watch and do nothing." William nodded, letting the boy's words settle in the air between them. "Most people would have looked the other way," he said. "But you did not." A silence followed. It was not uncomfortable, just heavy with everything unspoken. After a moment, William leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "How long have you been out here?" he asked gently. "Living like this?" Jalen hesitated, staring down at his hands. "A while," he said softly. "Since last winter. I bounce around. Sometimes shelters, sometimes just outside." The words came out small, almost embarrassed, like he hated admitting it out loud. William's jaw tightened, but not out of anger, out of something closer to sadness. "Where are your parents?" he asked. Jalen gave a slight shake of his head. "Gone," he whispered. "It is just me." William exhaled slowly, absorbing the boy's answer. For a man who spent his life signing contracts and attending charity galas, this kind of truth hit different. This was not numbers on a balance sheet. This was a real life sitting across from him. Without another word, William reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He stood and took a few steps away, speaking in low tones to someone on the other end of the line. His voice remained calm but firm, giving instructions, making arrangements. Jalen sat frozen, unsure whether he should stay or quietly slip away. A few minutes later, William returned to the table. There was something different in his face now, less confusion, more resolve. "Help is on the way," William said simply. Jalen's brows pulled together. "Help?" William nodded. "A friend of mine runs a shelter not far from here. A good place. Safe. You will have a bed tonight. Hot food. Clean clothes." Jalen opened his mouth to protest, but William held up a hand. "And that is just for tonight," he added. "After that, we will figure something more permanent." The boy blinked in disbelief. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why would you help me?" William offered a tired but genuine smile. "Because you helped me," he said. "And because maybe I should have been paying attention to kids like you a long time ago." Jalen felt something unfamiliar tighten in his throat. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt seen, heard, valued. A car pulled up near the cafe entrance. A woman in a navy coat stepped out, scanning the patio until her eyes landed on Jalen. "She is here for you," William said. Jalen stood slowly, still unsure whether this was all real. But as he stepped away from the table, William's voice stopped him one last time. "You changed my story today, Jalen," he said softly. "Now let me help change yours." For the first time all afternoon, Jalen allowed himself a small, fragile smile. And as he followed the woman toward the waiting car, one thought stayed with him. Maybe things could be different now. William remained seated long after Jalen had left with the shelter worker. The sun had shifted, casting long, golden beams across the cafe floor. Around him, life slowly returned to normal. Waiters cleared plates. Patrons resumed their conversations. But William sat still, staring at the bowl of soup that now sat cold and untouched. For a man who had built his empire on reading people, on trusting his instincts, the events of the afternoon weighed heavily on him. The truth felt both sharp and humbling. He had spent years judging people by appearance, by status, by what they could offer him on paper. And yet, the person who had saved his life was the one he would have crossed the street to avoid. William's eyes drifted to the seat where Jalen had been sitting just moments earlier. A street kid, overlooked, ignored, but full of a courage. William had rarely seen that he reached for his glass of water, took a slow sip, and allowed the lesson to settle deep inside him. Life, it seemed, had a way of sending the right people at the right time. Even if they arrived wearing torn hoodies and fear in their eyes. As the cafe buzzed around him, William's gaze lifted toward the horizon. For the first time in years, he felt something he could not quite name. Gratitude, regret, hope, maybe all three. And as the camera would slowly pan out, fading to the street where sirens had wailed. Only moments ago, a soft narrator's voice would speak for the audience watching at home. Sometimes, the people we overlook become the ones who save us. And sometimes, one small act of courage can change two lives forever.